Hello, guys. Welcome back to an exciting episode of YOML. This is the year of magical learning. We're on reflection 185, and I think today's book is a little bit, I would say, on the left field of all the books that we've
Yeah,
run through so far. So,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, maybe we can get inspiration from this book as well. So, this what we got.
I'll I'll do my best on this one. So this book is book number 185. It's Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child, the Heart of Parenting by Dr. John Gottman. Funny story about this. Our nanny, Kiara, my wife and I read this one together or listened to this one as an audiobook together. And obviously it was about, trying to connect with our children and to be better parents together. And it was just one of those books that her and I have done together. And I remember one day we were talking to our nanny Kiara about this book, and she was like, "Oh my God, Dr. Gottman?" And she's like, "Yeah, no, this is like, yeah, I'm totally into it." We're like, "How do you know who?" She's like, "Like the Gottman Institute." And I'm like,
Hmm?
like what is going on? She was like jazzed about Dr. Gottman, like he was some superhero or something.
He's an Andre Agassi to you.
I guess so. Yeah,
It's
he's
like the legend. You don't know the
the
legend?
legend of Dr. John Gottman. But yeah, so anyway, this book's about the psychologist named John Gottman and his team. This is based off 20 years of their research of techniques that parents can use to teach their children self-awareness and self-control and foster good emotional development. And long story short, that's what the title says. It's how to raise an emotionally intelligent child, right? If you're interested in that topic, go for it. I actually found it funny with my wife and I when we started this book. Like, you know, we got through it, because that's what this journey is about. Is it's not about, is this the best book ever or something like that. Some of them are going to be duds, or some of them are going to be ones that don't really connect with your dopamine and just light you on fire and want to go spark all these crazy thoughts. But this is about doing this together, doing this with my family, living for two with my daughter, all that stuff, right? So we got through it, we muscled through it, and we learned a few things along the way. My reflection title on this one is a toddler may not understand your words, but they'll always understand your actions. So as I was listening to this book with my wife, her and I both had the thought of, like, it's kind of a funny book in general because, like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, who the hell was the audience for this book, because the book was all about emotional intelligence in general. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm buying a book with the title How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child, the heart of parenting, like, I'm probably already have an emotional intelligence, that's probably higher than most people. And this book was like basically talking about baseline emotional intelligence and like what it is and how it goes. For me, I was kind of like, who is the audience of this book? I feel like my brain's already got it thinking that way if I'm picking up a book about how to help my kids to be more emotionally intelligent.
You have to
Right.
have a little bit to get a sample of what it is that you desire, and
Right.
then picking a book to say how to raise a emotional intelligence is meaning you got a taste and you like it and you want more, and that's where I think that's just what you're looking for is I want to learn more. So
Yes.
the more is the key.
Exactly. And I did not learn any more about emotional intelligence from
The
the
institute.
John Gottman, the Dr. Gottman. But that doesn't mean that, like, I didn't enjoy the book. I did learn a few things. It was kind of interesting. But actually, the biggest reflection that I got from this was I struggle with knowing that, like, I mean, hell, true, this whole entire journey has been about us exploring our emotions and growing our emotional intelligence and understanding how to train your elephant, I guess, if you will. Humans are amazing, and we have these beautiful emotions, negative connotations and feelings toward emotions. I love emotions. I think we should embrace them because I think that they've evolved with us for millions and millions of years to do very specific things and to drive us forward. Somehow we magically got rationality and consciousness and thoughts about thoughts where we could guide those emotions, and that separated us from the pack, and we've never looked back and been able to continue to train our emotions a lot and to harness these incredible, powerful things. However, the one thing that I kept thinking about this entire book was, how do you demonstrate that to, or how do you teach your child that? Like, we're talking about a toddler, we're talking about, a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or something like that. Like, this came from you and I exploring, a lot of pain and trauma, a lot of thoughts and ideas, a lot of books, a lot of reading, a lot of things like How to Raise an Emotionally, or books like Nonviolent Communication, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The Inner Game of Tennis, Zen Mind and the Beginner's Mind, the Bhagavad Gita, Influence, Drama of a Gifted Child, Purpose-Driven Life, How to Win Friends and Influence People, whatever, 48 Laws of Power. We're talking about all these different psychology and emotional things, and the righteous mind and the happiness hypothesis. How do you translate that to a toddler? Like, because they can't understand these things. Like this took us a lifetime to figure out where we're at right now, and it'll continue to take us in more of a lifetime to even start to scratch the surface, before we expire, right? So just made me start to think about like how do you actually help to raise an emotionally intelligent child? And the only thing I could think of is be a role model, lead by example, like, and to have these conversations, like my son or my daughter or my future children seeing me talking to True about my thoughts and feelings and emotions and writing these reflections every day and living my values every single day and challenging myself and playing and having fun, enduring and experiencing setbacks and figuring out how we move forward and the art of running downhill and all these other things, right? All these actions that I'm performing every single day, I feel like is how I really want to express and help Luca and Amelia and my other children, future children someday, to be emotionally intelligent, because they can see from mom and dad, like this is what they care about. And this is how they live their life based off of what they care about. And because of that, like I know that I can do that as well, because this is who I look up to. This is my role model. This is how I would learn from that. I don't know that we've talked about this, tons of times, right? About what would you tell yourself 20 years ago about how to be more emotionally intelligent? Like, I don't know, you can't. Like, I mean, it's just words are words, like it's like I can't give you 30 books to go read and say, here, Chris, 20 years ago, go read these 30 books and you'll figure out your emotional intelligence. It's just not how it works. You got to experience stuff, you got to learn, you got to grow, you got to reflect, you got to talk, you got to write stuff, process everything, live and learn, all that good stuff, right? That was kind of what I came up with. Just be a role model. And if you're following what matters to you the most and you're reflecting that every single day, your children will know if it's true or not, right? They will tell you, Daddy, that is not what. I'm sure you got 4 kids, so I'm sure they would call you out and be like, that is not you, Dad. Like, you are this, this, and this. And you're going to go, no, I'm not. Like, I'm this, this, and this. And they're going to go, no, you're not. So anyway, that's my thought. So the question was, would a toddler be able to easily see what you value by how you live your life? Love to get your thoughts.
Well, I think the answer is yes. So if we're talking about, from today's topic, talking about passing on the ball,
right?
Kind of reference from yesterday's reflection to the next generations, right? And I think in order for anyone to make an impact on any other person, is you have to lead by example, because people can't just fathom the experience that you and I have gone through, right? Everything that even for me and for you, right? When we learn something new, we are as inexperienced as a child, right? It's only the associations that we have gathered over the past number of years that we've been alive that's able to give us I guess, a more relatable emotions, concept, and image. So, I mean, let's say you and I speak a different language that we don't know, right? There's no way that we can say anything to get you to have an image in your head that I kind of think about. But you and I think about the same thing or having the same language, right? Then a lot of these things is we associate the, I mean, think of the sound. Sound is nothing more than a clashing of the air, right? It makes a sound, right? But because over time, we associate that sound with maybe this, that, and other, and bing, bang, boom, or whatever. That's the association we have to the clashing of the sound. Like, even for example, you think about maybe thunder, right? It strike and it go boom, right? We don't understand because we never associate that particular thunder sound with anything else.
Right.
And so for us, right, we can't associate something without an existing foundation. This is the fundamental of the human characteristic, especially for kids, because kids, when they're younger, they have nothing except for the base DNA that you give them that say, hey, I can breathe, I can do this naturally. But everything else I have to explore and associate. Because
Right.
there's no way you can say, hey, this is how you feel. You can explain it all day long and they won't understand it. They're gonna have to say, well, when you say the word sad, this is when you feel, and so you reinforce the feeling, and then whenever they accidentally come across a sad feeling and you say, hey son, are you sad, right? And they associate that feeling to the
Right.
word sad, right?
Yep.
And so for me, it's all about association. This is why I think the word relatable is important. The word, does it resonance with you? kind of is important because this is called meaningful relationship because we have to understand the other person and where they come from and can we have that overlap point of reference in order for us to kind of transfer the information. If I told you that, hey, I live in a house, right? And the house is as big as, let's say we take some kind of object that maybe like, hey, it's about, you know, five 18-wheelers, right? Know how big an 18-wheeler is. So I can tell you my house is as big as a five 18-wheelers. And then that association allows us as human to connect and understand and extrapolate and then conclude to an answer what it is. So emotional intelligence is very is the key to emotional intelligence is about the relatable. If I were to say, hey, Chris, you look like you're tired, you look like you're happy, you look like you're enthusiastic. How do I know that?
Right.
Right? How would I know? Only
Right.
only because I understood that feeling and I saw that feeling in you. And I say, well, that's a pattern I see. And I understand some of what you have gone through a little bit. So I become more emotional intelligent because I can sense how you're feeling. You can sense if I'm lying because if you and I talk for a long time, just like my kids, I say I'm this and that, and my kids said, no, you're not, because they knew me and they saw me over the years and what I did, right? Like you say, lead by example. Is you live your life in a certain way, and then you told, let's say I live my life in a certain way, and I say, well, I'm angry all the time. And then they say, I'm like slow to anger. And I said, no way, you're not slow to anger. You're always angry, right? That's where emotional intelligence comes in because my kids is emotional intelligent because they see what I did, but when I told them that I'm slow to anger and I'm very, nice and patient or whatever, right? It contradicts the association they had in the past.
Right.
So, like I said, and if you ask the question, like I said, I don't know shit, but my hypothesis is that once you give them I guess a more like a questions to explore. Say, hey, when somebody says this, right? This
Right.
means that they are doing this, and you associate something, and then they have to kind of go through. Like I said, if you tell them, hey, when you're sad, I mean you're not happy, right? They're gonna say, well, what is not
What's happening?
happy,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And so they don't know. They just gets what you told them, and so kept that as a piece of puzzle until later on, that when they felt sad,
Right.
then you reinforce that. Hey, your son, why are you sad, right? And they say,
Right.
well, okay, okay, I know what you mean when you say sad and not happy, right? So they learn over time by picking up these pieces
What they
of
learn from the actions is what you're saying, though, is what
right.
how they
It's
experience
the
like the
exploration. It's
feeling. Right.
explorations that will get these action into their personal experience, meaning
Right.
that the sad, the happiness. So whatever they did, it's
Right.
going to manifest a feeling, and then you reinforce a feeling with something that you said before. Therefore, they connect one and one together to make two. So they
Exactly.
associate. So it's all about associations to me, in a technical term, in a more like common term is, hey, how relatable are you? How can you relate to this person? And
Right.
this is about how you can be emotional intelligent. Because if you cannot relate to another person, you can't say you are emotional intelligent because
Right.
you're not, because you are oblivious, right? You don't understand the feeling of
Emotions.
another
Right. Yeah.
person.
You have to
And that's
understand
why you
emotions.
have other people who has a condition where, like, where you don't understand. You go socialize with people,
We don't socialize with people.
you don't understand other people's feeling. What you call it? That's a condition.
Oh,
No. It's pretty common. What was it?
I have no idea.
Um, I forgot that. But nonetheless,
Sociopath. Yeah.
well, it's just that everyone has the ability to sense an emotion because they have felt this emotion themselves, and they can see the patterns in other people. And for me, I think having the ability to put your son and daughters into a situation where they're able to come across these kind of feelings and reinforcing these feelings. Let's say you put your son in a box, right? You put him in a box. Nothing will happen to him. He won't have any feelings.
Right.
right?
You know, you're
But
right. And I want him
it
to have all the feelings. Like I want him to
the feeling.
exactly.
In order to be emotionally intelligent, he has to possess or at least come across these feelings in his
right.
lifetime, and
Right.
then he needs to associate that feeling with something else, with other patterns. And then the more you associate those feelings, then they can extrapolate and make something out of it.
Right.
So when you say, hey, let's
But
say you give a kid, hey, the how to win friends and influence people,
right.
they have no clue. Even if it's plain language, they don't
right.
understand because they never have these feelings before. They have never seen the betrayal. Just like for kids, they are colorblind
Right.
until you tell them, hey, that guy is white, this guy is brown, this guy is yellow, this guy's,
Yeah, blank slate.
then you associate that. But in the beginning, they are blind. They say, well, what's the difference between that person and that person? I mean, they're all my friends.
I remember I wrote a reflection. It's called Blank Slate. That was about some. I'm gonna have to look that one up really fast because I know I wrote something. It was another book about kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the drama of the gifted child, if I remember right. Anyway, that's what it was, the drama of the gifted child of being a blank slate. Like, kids are so impressionable. I think you sparked a thought in my head when you're talking about like speaking
An
another language.
association.
It's like an association. Yeah. My sales team that I lead, right? A lot of them are pretty new into the sales world. And that was by design, right? The leadership and the organization that I work for wanted me in particular to shape and mold and guide these people. They don't speak the language of sales, most of them. They don't speak the terminology of high tech. They don't speak this industry yet. And that is my job, is to teach them these things and to teach them these processes and stuff like that, and how to communicate with other people and what their job is, what their function, how to control the highs and the lows of the day, and stuff like that when things are coming in. And it's funny because we're talking about this. I'm not saying they're children, but like it's
I
no
mean, they're
different
like
than
children because you give them a technical jargon, they have no
no,
idea
yeah,
what it is
right.
until
It's like,
you reinforce
is
it.
that
Hey,
supposed to be
okay,
good or like,
you what are like maybe a technical terms of like DNS server, right? What the fuck is DNS server? Like,
yeah, I mean, this
no,
is all
like
day long. It's like
yeah,
it's
it's
like
like,
another
hey,
language, right?
it's a lookup,
Right.
thing, right? So you associate the term you say to them with something they knew. Hey, maybe a telephone operator or a central answering service that gonna look up stuff for you. So you can associate that. So eventually, you basically associate something with they understand. And
Right.
if they don't have that, then you can have to find something there. Let's say I give you some sort of a concept, right? Maybe I talk about fifth dimension, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or sixth dimension. What the fuck is the sixth dimension, right?
Right.
No one know. Like you don't know until I say, well, sixth dimension. Imagine having the square and having the square, be in multiple places or whatever. Like talking about fourth dimension, like time, meaning I was at this location, but at another time. That means that at 901, right? That's one point. 902 in the same place is
Right.
a different point, right? So having some kind of an associations allow you to
You have
understand.
to. I mean, you
But
have to
if you imagine that if they are completely far from the tech sector, right?
Mhm.
It will take that person just as long to find enough pieces to stack a step ladder to bridge. So
Right.
you think about that person as a child, because a child, right, in the beginning, they have nothing, right? So they have to stumble on things to say, well, this feels. That's why kids likes to explore, likes to
Right.
chew on things. They want to touch things, right? Want to
Excited.
make these are the piece of data points and piece of puzzle they have to take in order for them to say, well, these are the pieces I have. How
Right.
can I put them together and associate them so that I can cross that bridge, that bridge that gap, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
so for even for an adult, right? If they come with no foundation, they are just as a baby trying to learn something else. The good thing for adult is because we have come across so many events, different events, different things we felt, different information that we have gathered throughout our life by visual, touch, smell, hearing, and all that. So we have gathered like massive, you know, like gazillion pieces of data into our head, and then we are going to be able to take it out and make sense of it and kind of assemble in a way that kind of give us the bridge to gap between one piece of concept to the next piece of concept. And so you think about the question would be, if you would say, how would you, what would a toddler be able to see your value by living your life, because you basically give him the curiosity to say, well, what do you mean when you say, run downhill? They have no idea, and then they're going to ask. So that's why I think this. So the kind of transitions from the reflection today to a lesson we can send the audience with is that, based on what I hypothesize, is that an associations allow you to take in new pieces of data, and that data allows you to make more associations.
Right.
So the take-home lesson for me today is that I can read a book. I can read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? I can only understand so much based on what I know
Right.
in my previous experience. But if I happen to talk to Chris, I talk to Snow, I talk to Blake, he can bring in other pieces, and I can take those pieces together. And that's
Or I see
why
their life. I see their life.
exactly is the exchange of your pieces and my pieces combined together allow me to understand more
Right.
deeper than I would have by myself. This is why the YOMO, the year of magical learning, is so impactful for me. Is, yes, I was able to read some of these things, but like, I have a strong technical background. You have a strong creative background, right? So for me to bring in the technical background, you understand better, as if better than you would have done alone, and I would be understand more of certain aspect that on a creative side that I would never be able to comprehend, just because I don't have that piece. So
Right.
my discussion and my talking with you allows me to understand the book more. And then even if I talk to you, right, I was able to gather other pieces of information, like the art of running downhill, the donkey in the shed, my Spain,
Right.
right?
Right.
And knowing these pieces now, and then I go back and read the book again. Like, let's say I read a book,
That's like a
7
different
Habits of
lens.
High. We understand more, because you're talking about, like, in the beginning,
It's a different mental map.
different paradigm, different map,
Right.
because there's
Right.
pieces
Right.
that we completely did not understand.
The buildings that were on the grid, like you were driving by them and
Exactly.
you're like, they weren't even there. Oh, now they're there. Like there's a building
Yes.
right there. Like, and you're like, oh,
Exactly. A upgraded foundations. When
right.
you interact and associate with another person, you're able to copy the pieces of puzzle that the other person gives out into your brain. So you have actually accumulate even more. And then once you have an updated foundation and you read the book again, you're able to recognize it. You say, hey, that building was there. Because in the first round, and in the first gone through, you didn't see it.
I mean,
Okay.
how many times have
Okay.
you driven down? You drive to your kids' school and back every day to drop them off. Are you ever driving back home sometimes and you see like a building that you never seen? You drive it every day and you're like, what the? I've never seen that house before. It happens to me all the time, like, especially when I go run around my neighborhood.
Without the associations, it's invisible to you. You're blind to it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. There's certain areas of the park, or I'm like, man, I just don't remember places that I go. It's actually helped me a ton when I run around the neighborhood all the time now. When I'm running around the neighborhood, I see things differently because I'm going a little slower and I'm paying a little bit more attention to like my surround. Hey, don't drop the oil, while looking at the castle, right? So I'm like enjoying the castle a little bit more. When you're in the car, you're usually in a hurry, looking at the person in front of you, you're like, get out of my fucking way.
I think that book's hard to understand. That's
Yeah.
why if you read thinking fast and slow, you understand the happiness and process are much, much more.
Yeah, well,
Because
vice versa too.
Vice versa, right? Because
right.
they provide you a certain set of data points and certain set of puzzle pieces that
Right.
allows you to associate and comprehend. But if you read by itself, you say, what does this book mean? So you can't grasp the concept. And when you can't grasp the concept, it's blind to you. When you can't associate, it's invisible. And so
Right.
if you think about being emotional intelligent, is you're gonna have to be able to acquire all the pieces, all the
Right.
emotions that you would have.
But yeah, I mean,
But the thing
yeah.
is, I'm saying is, there are some people who acquire more and some people who acquire less. Because, like
Right.
I say, if you put your son in a box or in a bubble, he won't experience many emotions.
But here's the thing. Like the best thing I can describe is like I could play tennis my whole life with just one person, right? And we could think that we're pretty damn good, and we could innovate some new things. Then all of a sudden, I walk out of my little bubble, my little tennis bubble that I've been playing with my friend for 20 years, and I see this guy named Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal playing tennis, and I'm like, what fucking sport are they playing? And I'm like, that is a whole nother. I have to see it. I have to physically see. I have to see my father, like get angry at a driver in the car in front of me and go, okay, let's take it. Let's stop and swap. Let's do the. You know what I mean? Like, let's work through this process. Like, yeah, I'm angry, but it's not gonna end of the world. You know what I mean? Or like, dad just lost their job or something like that. It's okay. We'll find another, I've
Right,
thought
because the
through
thing
it.
is,
Like, we
you
have
know,
like,
people,
you,
you're gonna have to experience a different type of emotion, but so you have to put yourself in a situations where you can have more opportunity to experience emotions and then have reinforcement feedback on that emotion to become more emotionally intelligent. If I were an introvert, that's why introverts are not very emotionally intelligent, because they don't get out. They don't experience that many emotions. They only experience, like, you know, scare, right? Fear. They don't experience the other emotions.
an introvert.
It doesn't work that way, Chris. It doesn't work
I
that
don't know.
way.
I mean, I
You're
guess
not an
I'm not. I don't
introvert.
know.
You're not an
Yeah.
introvert. I mean, you're not an introvert. I can tell you this right now.
I
You're
mean,
not an introvert, so you can't.
I
You
have
don't
some
have.
introversion
You don't have
tendencies.
authority over a person who's
Yeah,
more
that's true.
introvert
I
than
mean,
you, right?
I
So
don't
I'm
know. Yeah.
telling you that the person who is introvert has less emotional EQ, has less EQ, right? Has more maybe IQ, but less EQ.
You
Why do you
know,
think that? It's not about the capacity. It's about, let's say you have two cups, right? One cup you fill with water, another cup you fill with tea. Right? You say, well, let's say tea is IQ, and then water is, or whatever else you want to choose as EQ, right? You fill it up, not to say that you're stupid or anything. I'm just saying, hey, you were spending your time on the EQ, therefore the IQ didn't get a chance to do its job. The other guy didn't do any EQ, then all he does is look at his computers or look at his books or whatever, then he has more IQ, right? Whatever it is. I'm not saying that IQ is like better or EQ is better or anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, just depending
I
on
mean, isn't EQ better? I mean, isn't EQ IQ? Like, I
no,
mean,
it to me it's just a
isn't this
label.
right? Isn't it
Everything
the
we
same
do,
thing?
everything we have is a label. So I'm saying there's no word that can describe exactly what it
Yeah,
is.
I
So
get it.
it's
Yeah.
not to say one person is more. I'm just saying one has more information on the books, and the other have more information on the
Right.
society and the
On
feeling.
action.
It's like the cup fills with different type of liquid, right?
Right.
It's all liquid, which is information. But like one cup, your cup, right? My cup is filled with, like, I don't know, physics, quantum mechanics, chemistry,
Right.
whatever. I know them, right? And then you have another cup. And you're talking about, hey, I have
Actually,
psychology, I have marketing, I know how to get a person to say yes, right? So it's
you,
still the same. And so you can't say, well, EQ is better than IQ, IQ better than EQ. Well, it
you need
depends
them
on your
both. I
preference.
mean,
You do need them both.
it reminds me of the Richard Feynman book. Surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman, when he would say the reason why Richard Feynman was because he had this uncanny ability to take incredibly abstract, complex ideas and topics and then be able to translate them into the real world to bridge that gap. He was able to bridge that gap between those
He
two
basically
worlds.
have both cup of tea and
Exactly.
water, right?
And
Because in order for him to explain it to you, he needs to understand you. He also needs to understand
the
the other
physical world
side,
and yeah,
and
no.
then and associate. It brings association together. So that's why a lot of time when we're talking about, let's say we're talking about a beaver must dam, right? Why are we saying that? Is to make the association.
Right, you get
You
it.
can
Like
simplify that. We say,
right.
hey, a donkey, don't be a donkey in the shed, right?
The beaver must say, like the donkey in the
Right.
shed.
The donkey in the shed is more advanced. That's why we need to
That
understand.
yeah.
It's pretty simple enough
Yeah.
for most layman people can understand it.
Everybody knows a beaver and they know the beaver dams. So
Beaver
like
dams, right? Almost like
like a bee makes
people.
honey, or a bear, eats a jar of honey. You know what I mean? Anyway, you're right. Actually, it's really funny you say that the whole, a donkey in the shed, because you say that to me and I understand, right? Like I have a visual
We have an
association.
association
Right,
before.
right.
That's why
Like
you
it's
understand.
a
If I
right,
tell you
yeah,
the outer run downhill, like my kids, they say, "What the hell are you talking about?"
right. Yeah, I mean, and they should, because they're like, I don't get. Well, that's the whole point, though, is like what I'm getting at with this whole entire thing is like, I could go teach Luca or Amelia any of this stuff, like but that doesn't mean they're gonna get it. Same thing with us when we talk about when we were younger, like we could go teach them whatever you want to teach us, but like that does not mean they're gonna understand. But what they will do is they will see your actions.
To is by being exposed to, because if you are in their vicinity and you expose to certain characteristics and concept, they're going to say, well, what are you trying to do, Dad?
Right.
And they're going to ask, and their curiosity, that's what's going to give them the ability to experience. And hey, the other run down here, how, we talking about, it's harder to go up here and it's easy to go down here, right?
Let's go take a run, Luca. Here, let's go take a run. Like,
right.
And we'll go, we'll go run up a hill. and I'll say, how you feel? And you're like, that fucking sucked. And he'll
Because
say, that
that's the
hurt. And then I'll
thing
go,
is
all right,
because
let's go down.
they see, therefore they go on to an explore, and once they explore, they have more opportunity to experience. They want to understand what's all around down here. You say, hey, go push this boulder up the hill, right? They get exposed to being pushed, and that feeling of being pushed up the hill, it's difficult and tiresome and sweating and all that, right? It's negative feeling, and then what happens? You do the opposite, right? So when they see you do something they don't understand, they're going to be curious.
Right.
And when they're curious, they have more opportunity. Let's say they like most people will take you on and say, "Hey, let's go do this." They say, "Okay." Or most people say, "Hey,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to have to do anything with it." Having the opportunity to experience a feeling allows you to take that as your one of your tools to put in your tool belt, and then whenever the next opportunity comes and you see a person doing something harder than it's supposed to be, you say, "Well, you are
running uphill, man.
or you're running uphill, right?"
Like
Here's
I've said this to my team like 10 different times over the past couple of weeks, where I'm like, you're trying too hard. Like, just relax. You'll go faster. Figure out what's important to you. Figure out how you can bring that out and focus on that. Don't worry about the outcomes. You just made me also think about something else, especially with our Club Any program going on with the team that I'm, the culture that I'm building in, with the Club Any model. What's that?
Company DNA.
Yeah, exactly. I regularly get asked by a couple of my teammates, what do you mean by this? Because they'll read my blog posts these days and they'll be like, what do you mean by that? And I'll explain it to them. And we'll
connect on that. Exactly.
I get it.
But when I say associations, right? I say connect to that. Well,
and then
that makes it easier for more people to understand.
Right. And then I say, like, do you see when I do XYZ? And this is why I'm doing that. And they're like, oh, I get it. But it like sets that example for them. And they're curious. They want to learn, right? Like my son, when he sees me goes.
If you don't lead by example, there's no opportunity. If you don't write this blog post, they won't be able to read it.
Just in my head at that point in time, and that's great.
There's no chance for it to connect, right? Because it's in your head. This is your framework or whatever that you're doing.
We haven't passed the ball.
You don't lead by example. Like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what you are leading by example by making this blog post and discussing this on this podcast, right? And people see them and then they go and read it and they have an opportunity to ask you, hey, Chris, what do you mean by this? But if you did not write the blog post, we did not, implement or did not re-utter the word when you talk to them, right? They would never have the thought to ask the question, hey, like, do you ever, like, if we find somebody, let's say in the other side of the world, what's the chance of them come to you, hey, Chris, hey, can you explain to me the word, the art of running downhill? How would they even come up with that question in the first place?
I mean,
never, right? Would you say what's the chance of them asking you that out of the blue? That they never come across anything you've done, right? Everything's in your head. Everything's in your head. What's the chance of a person that knows nothing about you come and ask you, hey, Chris, can you explain the art of running downhill?
I mean, zero, but I'll flip that around. Even if you went up to just a random person and started to say the art of running down the hill, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right. If you just randomly picked a random person on the street and walked up and were like, so I wanted to talk to you about, that a beaver must dam. Like, you might as well be that guy that's on the street corner that's like, at every major sporting event that's like, Jesus will save you, and a microphone, and people just completely. I mean, he's literally got a microphone standing on a box that he's screaming at people that are walking by him, and they're all just ignoring them. Like, oh my God, I got to listen to this guy talk about a dam is coming. The river is coming. The beaver must dam, and they're all like, can you imagine, like, everybody looking at you going,
I mean, this is essentially the image without and you cannot bridge that whatever notch gap that you have.
Scream it in their face, you could yell in their ear, like, and if that's not how it works, right? Like, the only way it'll work.
The only thing that I utter a sound, which is a clashing of air molecules together, okay, and you understood what I'm saying. The thunder is same concept. It's clashing of the air molecule, and what we hear, what does that say? I have no idea. It's loud. Right. It's super loud, but do you understand what it is? My mouth is vibrating, and it's pushing air together, and it's clashing, and it creates this noise, this sound. But you understand what I'm saying? The thunder is clashing the air just the same way. But how come we don't understand what the thunder say?
Good question.
It's
I mean,
louder. It's louder
right.
than what I say. But no, it's about associate. We never associate that thing with anything. But we
Right.
associate what I say. Let's say I said the color green. Well, you associate the green with an image in your head. I
Yeah, of
say an
course. Yeah.
elephant, right? I say a beaver. I say a dam, right? You associate that. You know what a beaver. You sense what a beaver is. That's why a lot of times, like when you talk to me about some like the All Blacks, right? What the hell is an All Black? And then
Right.
you go and you show me the picture, and then you show
Yeah.
me the rugby ball, and you show me the video. You're making the dots. You're connecting the
Right.
dots for me. And then once I have that, right now I have a bigger arsenal of tools in my tool belt. And
Yep.
then
Yeah.
next time I become more emotional intelligent just by talking to you.
100%. I mean, like that's the point of all this, right? Like, I mean, that like this is a journey of emotional intelligence in a lot of ways, you know. I mean, I always say this is a journey of this in a lot of ways, but it is. I mean, like there's so many different facets and multi-functionalities of this journey, and which is great, which is a human being, you know, like we're not one thing. So anyway, I feel like that's a good place to end for the day. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be exposed to
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
opportunities
Yeah.
to experience sadness, happiness, betrayal, whatever, right? And if you experience that, then you can understand and relate and be more emotionally intelligent if that's your goal. If
Right.
your goal to be more emotionally intelligent, you got to be out there. You can't just sit in the house and do nothing,
Right.
right? You won't get it that way, regardless how many books you read.
Yeah.
Association at all.
I will go back to Richard Feynman. I remember the class that he used to teach. I can't remember what, like, it was at Harvard or wherever he used to teach. That his students would be some of the most brilliant minds in all of the world, right? Richard Feynman was teaching, like the guy that helped to build the atomic bomb and was a world-renowned physicist and all this other stuff. And he would say some very basic things. He would ask them, and the mathematical formulations of some of these really, really complex stuff, and they would be able to do it. Then he would show them a real world example of how that looks, and they were like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, this isn't this, like this. He's like, what is going on? Like, they can't even, like, this is the real world example of what you were, you know, what you just described to me and here, but you can't see this, but you can see this, like, because that means you just haven't made that connection yet, you know. So like, I agree with you. It's all about building connections and associations, and then being curious and asking people around you to help you to explore this. Or, you know, if you're lucky and you're blessed and you have people that already understand these things to
This is what this
you
is
know.
this is what I call the auto rundown here. Because if you want to be able to have more EQ, you're gonna have to put yourself in an environment
Yeah.
where there's more EQ opportunity,
Right.
right? So it's about choosing your environment. That's why I keep saying, like, you can't change who you are, but you can change what's around you. What's up there that I want? Is there something down here that I want? Why do I have to go the one that has to go uphill? Maybe I'm looking for some kind of flower. There's one uphill,
Right. There's one
but
downhill
hey,
too.
I shift my environment to say, hey, I'm going down here to pick a flower.
Exactly.
I get my same desire,
Right.
right?
You still got to work. It's just less work, you know,
It's
and
auto run down here versus
right.
auto
Yeah.
run up. You
You're still running.
choose
Like,
your pick your environment. It's probably the best thing you can do for your growth. That's why when we come in as company, that's why you and I go on this podcast every night. I've expanded my mind in the ways that I want, in the core
right.
values that I want, right? Finding the things that I desire, whether that's a flower, a rock, or a plane, a piece of gold, I don't care. But that's the thing is you choose your environment, and that environment will help you run downhill. But if I choose an environment that, hey, let's go and do something that is nonsense,
Right.
you know, think about the, I don't know, I'm running out of ideas of
Well,
what kind of,
you just
but
made
I'm just saying things I don't care about, whether that's learning how to be more like a monk, right? I don't care about that. I have no desire to be like a monk.
right.
And so for me to be surrounded a monk, it's just gonna be run uphill for me. You think about it,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's not the desire I want, but going to, I mean, still you're still putting out effort, but you're going to this magical learning podcast, right? We just talk about what we know, and then I've learned a little bit every single time, and you learn a little bit every single time, just because
Yep.
our ideas are different, right? And
Yep.
when we are presenting different ideas, we can copy those ideas into our head and put it into our tool belt for us to use later on, and then we improve and growth as time passes.
You just gave me the interesting idea of adjusting my child's environment. So like maybe I'll just throw him
Right,
outside
because
in the cold and be like, hey, make it home. We'll see you in a little bit. You know, like, and I'll just watch from afar as I can until he freaks out. Like, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna do that.
I mean,
Well, it is important to put them in
It
situations
is
where they have
important
to get-
because you're supposed to give
no,
your kid
I don't want to
a
atomic bomb
training
them,
regimen.
you know?
Right?
Exactly.
You're not trying to kill them.
Go jump in the cold water and come
Go
back.
outside for 2 seconds and go, right? Next time go for 4 seconds. Next go
Right.
for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But because that training, his body will get better because it's able to make this adjustment.
But then we can
So it's
talk
just-
about it afterwards. I can say, like, how'd you feel? Was it frustrating? How, you know, were you scared? Were you tired? You know, like, I mean, we can talk to. That's how you become emotionally intelligent. All right, thanks for joining, everyone, and we look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow night for book 185.
186.
86. Sorry, yeah.
All right, sounds good. Good night,
See ya.
everybody.